Well, welcome everyone. We're so glad you joined us on a Saturday evening in our kitchens for three artists,
four humors,
and food.
Tonight, you're joining us in our kitchen. So we come here with open hearts, open bellies to share some food, some Shakespeare, and some love with you this evening. Or actually, Newton, could you talk to food and Shakespeare?
Yes. Oh, yes. Food and Shakespeare. So, food and Shakespeare go hand in hand like peanut butter and jelly. Food is referenced in every one of Shakespeare's plays. In fact, food is referenced over 2,000 times, and that is a lot. And it would seem that the bard likes food almost as much as I do.
And how are we talking about food and Shakespeare in particular this evening, Em?
Well, we're excited because another thing that shows up in Shakespeare's plays, just like food does, but it's a little bit more incognito, is this theory of the four humors. And for those of you who don't know, the four humors is this theory that dates all the way back to ancient Greece, to philosophers who believed that the human body was constantly balancing these four humors, or four liquids that flow within the body. And I have a fun little diagram to share with you all. So, these four liquids that flow within the body are blood. You also have yellow bile, black bile, and phlegm. And these four liquids are also associated with different organs in the body. So the blood was thought to have been associated with the liver. Yellow bile was associated with the gallbladder. Black bile was associated with the spleen. And of course, phlegm came from the lungs. Great, so these four humors would fall between two of four different kinds of qualities. You could have between wet, hot, dry, and cold. And Eileen was typically balanced and patient and thoughtful. And someone who was phlegmatic typically showed apathy and laziness. And a melancholy person was pessimistic, depressed, introspective, and a choleric person was quickly tempered and easily angered and showed a lot of uncontrolled rage. And these definitely show up in a lot of Shakespeare writings.
So hopefully tonight we can show you how the humors kind of demonstrate that you are what you eat. Yeah. So Newton, do you have a drink for us to start us off?
I do. So the humor that I'll be covering for this evening will be the humor for phlegm. And I have a quote that just starts off from Master Page and Mary Watts of Windsor. I hope we shall drink down all unkindness. And I really take to that quote pretty strongly. Slightly phlegmatic people are kind, content, and fair. And a character who is seen in three of Shakespeare plays to be not that thing, who would be a lot more phlegmatic, would be Falstaff. And he's got a lot of phlegm in him, and there's many references to his unattractiveness. This, which I'm about to read for you, is how Prince Hal greets him in Henry IV, when Falstaff asks, "What time is it?" "Thou art so fat-witted, with drinking of old sack, and unbuttoning thee after supper, and sleeping upon benches after noon, that thou hast forgotten to demand that truly which thou wouldst truly know. What a devil hast thou to do with the time of the dead, unless hours were cups of sack, and minutes capons, and clocks the tongues of bawds, and dials the signs of leaping houses, and the blessed sun himself a fair hot wench in the flame-colored taffeta. I see no reason why thou shouldst be so superfluous to demand the time of day." I think that kind of speaks to Falstaff's character. So the drink that I'm going to share with everybody here is just a simple mead. This is a honey wine that has been made for a very long time. This particular brand that I got here is from the Goblin Alchemy, and I got it from the Clark Park Farmers Market. I mixed in just a little bit more honey for myself, and I also gave Bee and Emily a sample to try as well. So this is the basis of all the drinks that we'll be having tonight, which would be a honey wine or a mead. Mead was supposed to balance out that phlegm that you have in your body. Someone who is extra phlegmatic could have some mead, not some weed, but some mead and enjoy a balancing of their phlegm. So I'm going to have some here for us this evening.
And speaking of balance, you'll notice that we'll be talking about balancing different energies in different foods in order to create kind of a holistic, healthy person. So my focus actually is going to be on the humor of choler or yellow bile. And yellow bile is associated with hot tempers, fiery people. The element is fire, and it is considered a hot, dry quality. As a grounding text, I really got attached to Henry V because it came off of a series of plays about Henry growing into a king from being Prince Hal, right? And then moving into a state where he's taking leadership and he's charging all of the British to war against the French. So a lot of the characters are actually really, really fiery and courageous. I think when we talk about the humors, we kind of think about the negative aspects of them, but also when you balance out too much excess in one direction, you can actually pull out the positive aspects of the humor. So the positive aspect of color would be that someone is really courageous. Someone has clear thought and a mission and is mission driven. And that is definitely bleeding through the entire text of Henry. In fact, one of the characters, I think the constable and the constable and Orleans are discussing British soldiers. And at one point the constable says, and then give them great meals of beef and iron and steel. They will eat like wolves and fight like devils. To which Orleans replies, aye, but these English are shrewdly out of beef. Constable, then shall we find tomorrow they have only stomachs to fight and none to eat. The idea being that if you didn't have meat to eat, if you didn't have beef, you couldn't work up the courage and the spirit and the strength to fight an army. So my recipe tonight is actually a version of a meat pie. And throughout all these plays, you'll see some references to meat pies or savory pies. But the beauty of meat pies is that they're easy to make. You can stick them in your pocket, therefore they can be a good pocket pie. You can take them on a picnic. And for the one that I made for tonight, it's a 5-ingredient pie. The main meat is beef, which you saw me sauteing up earlier, if you tuned in early. And I balanced that out. I balanced out beef with a cold, wet vegetable in order to balance out the system. So I chose something that grows in autumn. And this is a leek. And a leek is in the onion family, I think. It's in the onion family, right? And you use the white part of the leek. It's the sweeter part. And it'll taste like a French onion. But Shakespeare has some things to say about the leek. And if you look at Henry V, there's a particular character who has a lot to say about leeks. So
I beseech you heartily, scurvy, lousy knave, at my desires and my requests and my petitions to eat, look you, this leek, because, look you do not love it, nor your affections and your appetites and your digestions does not agree with it. I would desire you to eat it. Will you be so good, scald knave, as eat it? You called me yesterday a mountain squire, but I'll make you today a squire of low degree. I pray you, fall to. If you can mock a leek, you can eat a leek. I say, I'll make him eat some part of my leek, or I'll peat his pate 4 days. Bite, I pray you. Eat, I pray you. Will you have some more sauce to your leek? There's not enough leek to swear by.
But Fluellen is actually very near and dear to my heart now, because in re-examining Henry V, it turns out Fluellen is a foreigner amongst the British. So we're talking about an age where the British like conquered like Celtic civilizations, and Fluellen was a Welshman. And Fluellen's symbol of national identity is actually a leek, and he wears it in his hat very proudly. And Pistol, who's another soldier, has insulted him and has made fun of Fluellen wearing the leek. So in the scene you just saw that I played out with my very talented dog actor, Fluellen is making Pistol eat the leek as a way of respecting his national identity. And I just thought it was so great, because in Henry, you see this confluence of cultures that I don't think I quite recognized when I'd seen it performed before. But then in examining the text, I was like, here are a bunch of different immigrants, if you would. Fluellen's one. And so really in this world, you not only see like a blatant example of like the humors on display as a result of what people are talking about, what people are eating, but also you see like these cross cultures start happening. And as a Vietnamese person, I just was really struck by these moments of Fluellen, because my parents spoke with accents when I was growing up. So
yeah,
I just thought that was like such an interesting thing.
Yeah, so cool.
But I need to talk about my recipe real fast, so I don't want to take up too much time. You're gonna want to get these puff pastries. Can you see that? They're in the frozen aisle, because if you try to make handmade puff pastry right now, it's gonna be probably not a great idea in humid weather. I tried it in my own kitchen. You'll waste a pound of butter and everything sticks to everything. So if you get these, the sheets are ready made. I sauteed half a pound of beef. This is for 2 to 3 pocket pies. Chopped up leeks. You take the white parts. I used dried shiitake mushrooms, which you can find in any Asian store or in the international aisle. Soak the dried mushrooms in some hot water, drain them, slice them. And you're gonna saute the mushrooms, the leeks, and the beef together with salt, pepper, a dash of cinnamon. And then you're gonna take your puff pastry sheet, like so, and you're gonna add a scoop on the inside, like so. Fold it over, and you can press the sides with a fork. Stick it in the oven for about 20 minutes on 430, and you're gonna get these delicious, airy puff pastry pocket pies. And in Vietnamese, we call them pâté chaud, which was a result of French colonial rule for a couple hundred years in Vietnam. Okay, I'm gonna pass the baton back to Newton. Can you give us another drink, sir?
There's this really cool line in Romeo and Juliet. Romeo and Juliet is one of my favorite Shakespeare plays. It's one I've done the most. I don't know if it's my favorite, but and then the friar also presents Juliet with a drink that would make her drowsy and appear to be dead. The line for that is, "And this distilled liquor drink thou off, when presently through all your veins shall run a cold and drowsy humor." Very interesting. It's all connected here, isn't it? Then my next drink will definitely bring on a cold and drowsy humor. This is going to be another mead-based drink called Old Southern Hunter. I really like this. It's very warm. There's no extra bits of things in here. The ingredients for this: 1 ounce of 1.5 ounces of rye, 1.5 ounces of traditional honey mead, orange bitters, and some honey. And you can change those ratios out however you would like to make it a little bit more sweet, a little bit more sour, a little bit more rye, a little bit more mead, whatever you'd like. And you have a nice little, I'm going to sip on this too, because I love to test what I'm making. You know, you got to make sure that it's good. So, oh yeah, that's tasty. That's tasty. Hey, Emily, since we're talking about some tasty things, Old Southern Hunter, here. What do you got next?
And I thought it might be nice to close out with a dessert. And one of my favorite Shakespeare plays is Twelfth Night, because one of my favorite characters of all time is Sir Toby Belch. So one of my favorite lines from Twelfth Night that actually relates to the humors is from when Malvolio is interrupting their fun times at night. They're celebrating the Twelfth Night celebrations, right, that come right around Christmas. And Sir Toby Belch says, in response to Malvolio shutting him down, he says, "My lady's a catane. We are politicians. Malvolio's a pegaramsey, and 3 merry men be we. Am I not consanguineous? Am I not of her blood? Tilly Valley, lady." So here he thinks that he clearly is of sanguine nature, right? He's saying, am I not consanguineous? But it's ironic because Toby Belch loves to indulge in wine and drink and good times, which is a much more kind of phlegmatic type characteristic. So it's definitely playing at the different humors there. Another one of the lines that he says that led me to is, "Dost thou think because thou art virtuous that there shall be no more cakes and ale?" And the cakes in that line are actually not really referring to the cakes that we think of today. They're more like biscuits or cookies. And the cookies that I think I've done a lot of research, and it's pretty hard to find exactly what cookies they were, but historians believe that they were Shrewsbury cookies, which came from the town of Shrewsbury. And they're basically little sugar cookies that are flavored with rose water and nutmeg and cinnamon. And I have a little video to share with you as well, in which I found a fun 17th century recipe for Shrewsbury cake. So for Shrewsbury cookies. So let's take a look.
This recipe says a quart of very fine flour, got that, 8 ounces of fine sugar, beaten and sursed. What is sursed? How do I type this in? Sursed. A white lead pigment sometimes used in cosmetics. Doubt it. Sursed. Maybe sugar? Accursed? No. Excuse me? Sursed. What's a surse? Well, we got sugar. 12 ounces sweet butter, got that. Nutmeg, grated, know what that is. Rose water, actually went to the store and got rose water. Work together with your hands for half an hour. Then roll into little round cakes about the thickness of 3 shillings. 3 shillings, how much was the thickness of, like, maybe, shillings were really that big? Like, I would think like a cookie wants to be like that big, right? We'll just make cookies. Then take a glass and cut the cakes. Well, I have cookie cutters. And then strew some flour on white papers and bake them in an oven as hot as for manchet. Manchet is probably the better way to pronounce that. Bake them in an oven as hot as for manchet. What is manchet? I don't know. Manchet. As hot as for manchet. Oh, a loaf of the finest kind of white bread. So, for bread, great. If the oven be not hot, well, my oven will be very hot, set your lid down until they be baked enough, until they be baked enough, for they must look brown, not white. You may keep them half a year, but new baked are best. Well, I think I'll be eating them new baked, because half a year, that's 6 months. Great, I'll have cookies forever. Awesome.
So basically, when I found a modern recipe of these cakes, it's really quite simple. It's equal parts butter, flour, and sugar, and you roll them all up into like a nice paste and dough. I used like softened butter, and then I popped it in the fridge like a good baker would do. And we have this lovely dough, and then you like drip some rose water in there and some nutmeg, and you roll them out into little cakes. And they end up coming out pretty cute.
Ooh, very good.
And Emily, is that cookie the size of 1 shilling?
Okay, so I got it wrong. So when it says the thickness of 3 shillings, this is not the thickness of 3 shillings. I would say that's the thickness of like 1 shilling. But I really like that thickness.
I noticed that you mentioned cinnamon in your cookies. And I actually had cinnamon as the sweet to add to round out the taste of the beef. It was salt, pepper, and then a dash of cinnamon. But it's so interesting to me because cinnamon, do we know how that came about in Elizabethan society? What is this timeline and what is this world we're like living in when we start to source these ingredients from different places?
And when you think about sugar, if you think about sugar from the 1700s, I mean, it was a really rare ingredient. And that's because it was such a difficult product to source and to develop. It was really difficult and labor intensive. And it wasn't until the introduction of the slave trade and slave labor to produce the sugar that it became so ubiquitous for society. Even like in the 1700s, it was financing the slave trade, it was financing the colonization of the Americas, and it was financing the wealth of the European nations. And it's interesting to think about people going to attend plays in the 1700s and to think about the world that was happening around. And even thinking about sugar and Shakespeare, like sugar technically was not recommended by science, like by scientists at the time for phlegmatic characters. Like it was not something that you should indulge in. And yet Shakespeare uses the word sugar in such like sweet, wonderful, endearing ways. I could not find any references to sugar and the humors, but what I did find is lines like, for honesty coupled to beauty is to have honey, a sauce to sugar.
I mean, when we talk about the humors, at first when all three of us kind of started like going down the rabbit hole of research, it felt like hocus pocus, right? But the more we dug in, the more that we realized that Elizabethans were so holistic in their approach to the body and health. And it's echoed, at least for me, it was echoed in other cultures too. At the same time, we're looking at like Eastern medicine and its relationship to like managing like the chi and balance of the chi, right? Or you're looking at like India and Ayurvedic medicine and the way they balanced exercise with diet and meditation, and like the system was supposed to be in balance.
I feel like melancholy is one of the words that sort of translates the most to modern times. Like we know what melancholy means. And some of the melancholy characters in Shakespeare we've got Hamlet. When he says, I'm pigeon-livered and lack gall, he's saying, I wish that I had choleric tendencies, right? Like, I wish that I had gumption and drive, but instead his melancholy is keeping him back. And that's just a really interesting way to
the last one we didn't touch upon was sanguine, which is blood humor. And often that's associated with the romantics, the open-hearted characters.
And I also want to talk a little bit about like moderation, right? So like when we're talking about food and drink, balancing things out, making sure that we have moderation of either one. A quote that comes to mind for me in Twelfth Night, Olivia is asking one of the clowns, what's a drunken man like, fool? And the clown says, like a drowned man, a fool, and a madman. One draft above heat makes him a fool. The second mads him, and the third drowns him. And so I just, it makes me think like we have to make sure that not just in food and drink, it makes me think about other parts of our lives that we deal in, that we engage in, that we have moderation and that we're considerate about how much of that we are actually taking in. And I have, do you guys mind if I share 2 more drinks that I have that might go along with some of the desserts that Emily had earlier? Right, so one of the other drinks that goes well with desserts are ports or sherries. They're good digestifs, after dinner meals, after dinner drinks. But mead can also serve as something that can go well with a pastry or some type of sweet, tasty treat that you have. So I have 2 drinks, and one is, I'm just going to call this an apple ginger mead. This is made with, I'm going to pull up the recipe here for this, and it has exactly what I said in it, apples and ginger. 1 ounce bourbon, 2 ounces of apple mead. I put in some fresh chopped ginger root, And I also put some fresh apple in here and a little bit of lemon just to kind of balance things out there, which is very nice with a treat, depending on what you got. It smells wonderful, of course. And I have to always taste my work. And then I've got a Blackberry Mead here. So I've taken some muddled blackberries, a lime wedge or a squeeze of lime wedge of lime. I put in 1 ounce of Blackberry Mead, also with the muddled blackberries, and 1 ounce of gin, and then a splash of club soda. And this is just like really nice to like sit out on the porch at night and listen to the crickets and watch the fireflies out in the field or wherever you have, just as in the summertime. So it's very nice. So those are 2 other drinks that I have. So all total 4 drinks for you this evening.
So you guys want to try one of my pastries?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to do that. Yeah. Would you like to try some of my drinks too?
Yeah, Newton, I'm
I
gonna
would
just
love
hand
to.
you one of these, okay?
You want to try one of my cookies?
Yeah. Here you go. All right.
Oh, thanks.
Oh, thanks, B. Wait,
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
this
it is. I got that right here. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Emily, can I get one of your cookies?
Yeah.
oh, wait, here.
Yeah. Can I get one too?
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
You hear me that? Yeah. Thanks. What we got up there? Yeah. Great.
This is so good.
Oh, that's good. Thank you. Let's see what we got.
Wow, the mead smells delicious.
Mm.
This is so much butter in this cookie. It's delicious.
Newton, this is good.
This is great.
This feels wrong. I feel like we're making everyone watch us indulge in this delicious.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to thank you all so much for joining us this evening, and we're so grateful to have brought our kitchens to you. And we hope that you join us for future events.
Yeah. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Yeah.
And Emily, do you want to share a final quote to close out our evening?
I would love to. I've got some Pompey from Antony and Cleopatra, and he says, "We'll feast each other ere we part, and let's draw lots who shall begin."
Very nice. Very cool.
Till next time.
Thanks, everybody.